Hey guys, and hope you are all doing well today. So we have a matchup between give me a second, turn off debug camera, between the Dark Elves going up against the forces of the Dawi. The Dark Elves are being led as usual by Ice Power, can never get tired of seeing his Dark Elf builds, and the Dwarves are being led by Grombrindle, and he is staying true to his name by sticking with his home faction, the Dwarves, but unfortunately we do not see Grombrindle, the white dwarf, on the field. We do see a Rune Lord leading the Dwarves. So let's quickly go over each of the armies and get right into the battle. So for the Dark Elves, let's start with the Vanguard. 2 units of Dark Riders deployed in either corner, and a couple of Harpies, all of which are just there for some backline harass. They probably won't be able to chew through majority of the Dwarven infantry, and so they're just there to interrupt firing lines for as long as possible. For the front lines of the Dark Elves, we have Bleak Swords, who also don't trade the best since they don't have too much armor piercing. They don't trade the best with Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards, but they can hold the line for relatively long. Dwarf units generally don't have the best attacking stats, and Bleak Swords, their job is just to swarm around and try and catch as many units, as many squishy ranged units as possible. We also do have 2 units of Hargoneth Executioners as well, who will be providing the main damage dealing power for this infantry. They are armor piercing, they are the elite infantry of the Dark Elves, and they should be able to chew through pretty much all the Dwarven infantry they go up against. Unfortunately, the Dwarves have gone with a flame cannon in this stance, or in this battle, and those Hargoneth Executioners will be taking a beating from that anti-infantry artillery piece. We also have some Sisters of Slaughter on either flank. These guys are wonderful at holding out. They don't have the greatest attacking stats, but their melee defense is in the sky. They will definitely take a very, very long time to kill. And we do have Malekith on a chariot. Very powerful, especially with, say, Soul Stealer. Actually, no Soul Stealer. Surprising. Soul Stealer is pretty valuable for healing, but Ice Power has decided not to go for that and go for a Chill Wind along with Stand Your Ground. We also have a Sorceress of Beasts with Manticore Summoning and Flock of Doom. And for the forces of Grombrindle and the Dwarves, we have a front line of Dwarf Warriors along with some Miners with Blasting Charges, some Rangers to back them up, along with 1 unit of the Ulthar's Raiders, the Regiment of Renowned Rangers with great weapons there. Throwing axes can definitely lay a hammering on majority of the Dark Elves, especially those single entity units such as Malekith. So Malekith is definitely going to want to stay out of their range of fire. We also do have, 3 units of Thunderers, one of which is being hopped upon by these Harpies. Let's actually stop the battle since the fighting's already started. We do have 3 units of Thunderers just for some additional firing power. And for the backlines, we have 2 units of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons and 2 units of Longbeards. The one sort of big problem I see with this Dwarven army is that I don't know if they have just the straight up numbers of infantry to deal with the Dark Elves, who have tons of Bleak Swords, tons of Hargoneth Executioners. I don't know if these Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards, who are relatively few in number, I don't know if they'll be able to hold out for as long as they need for the ranged weapons to do their damage. But yeah, most of this Dwarf army is going to be heavily based around these Rangers and Thunderers. Anyways, let's get the battle started, as some Harpies do dive on top of some of these Thunders. They of course don't have the greatest attacking stats themselves, and so it probably will go in favor of the Thunders, but the important thing is that these Thunders are not firing into the front lines. We do have a, what is that called again? Chill Wind. We have a Chill Wind going through some of the Rangers, not doing the most damage, and now the Flame Cannon is opening fire into some of these Hargoneth Executioners. You can see how quickly these Bleak Swords are already routing from the field. I have a feeling that the Flame Cannon is mostly responsible for that though. Flame Cannon unfortunately is doing a bit of friendly damage, but as long as it's hitting more Dark Elf units than it is Dwarves, should be doing just fine, especially Hargoneth Executioners, which are very, very elite infantry. On the right side, I forgot to mention there were Ekron Miners, the Regiment of Non-Miners with Blasting Charges, but they are being beaten down by some of these Hargoneth executioners. And unfortunately, what the dwarves are doing currently makes them very liable to just being infantry rushed and shutting down a lot of the backline. Another chill wind going through some Altars Raiders, sorry. Again, not doing too much damage. But the dwarves are keeping a very tight formation of firing units, which unfortunately may end up being the death of them. Once the front line of the dwarves is inevitably broken through, they might find it tough to find angles to fire when their ranged units are so closely grouped. They should be trying to spread out across the battlefield as much as possible and retreat from the collapsing front lines as quickly as possible. Some rangers have already been hopped upon by this Sorceress of Beast and will likely be routing relatively soon. Malekith has taken a ton of damage himself. I'm not sure exactly what did that, probably some thunder fire, but he is not really in the state that he can just charge through whatever units he wants. He really has to be careful in choosing his engagements from now on. Some Harpies were routed from the field, and looks like the other unit might just be gone already. A Manticore summon does come in, and the Sorceress of Beast has been gooned out by the Rune Lord, but still, the Manticore summon does manage to get popped out. I don't know if there's been one already, but this one should do a decent bit of damage to the Rangers and Thunders, and this is what I was talking about, how the Dwarves were kind of grouping their ranged units together, which would inevitably end up being the death of many of them. And now we have Rangers and Thunders surrounding this Feral Manticore, and they will likely be terror routed very soon. What should happen is the Manticore goes after the Rangers and the Thunders back off and try to crossfire into it, but unfortunately they are just way too closely grouped and are getting shut down one unit at a time. These Bugman Rangers are being chased by some of the Bleak Swords, and across the lines the Dwarves are not faring the best, though the balance of power is very Dawi favorite. I'm guessing that's mainly due to the fact that the Rune Lord is so healthy and Malekith himself is very weak. It seems like a Rune of Wrath and Ruin was on Malekith, but he does manage to escape it without the Rune Lord catching up. And now the Dark Elves are just playing chase to a lot of the remaining Dwarf units. They're trying to make sure they are completely routed off the field, since if a lot of these ranged units do return, they can likely rout Malekith by themselves. Just a couple missiles and Malekith is down for the count. But he is doing a very good job of getting some rear charges, shutting down Dwarven infantry, and chasing off some important units. Dark Riders have returned to the fight and are attempting to shut down some of these Coilers, but the Rune Lord is right there to stop them. Honestly, I think the Dark Elves have taken a commanding lead on the rest of the battlefield. It's just, will they be able to take down the Rune Lord by themselves? I'm guessing if they can get a complete surround with all their infantry, the Rune Lord will probably fall, but Malekith for sure cannot do that by himself. I think Ice Power does realize this and is mainly just focused, instead of blobbing around the Rune Lord, is mainly just focused on cleaning up the Dwarven army. These Altars Rangers do actually manage to beat down these Bleak Swords and will be harassing them with some axe fire as they run away. Some Hargoneth Executioners turn to try and avenge their brethren, and let's see if they manage to catch these Raiders. Seems like they will, and they will likely be decimating the lines. Oh no, they're wavering. Now the Altars Raiders are turning. Seems like skirmish mode is on them, but unfortunately they are being completely surrounded. Sisters of Slaughter coming in from one side, a chill wind going through them, and Malekith probably going to get a final charge into them and knock them out of the fight. Rune Lord taking... oh, well, it looks like the Dwarves have conceded, since it seems like the Rune Lord was pretty much the only weapon left. So a very good battle from both sides, and let's check out how each of the units did. So for Ice Power, I'd say one of the highlights was, of course, even though the Harpies don't look like they have many kills, they were pretty valuable in shutting down those Thunders for a long time and ensuring that they don't get optimal firing angles into, say, the Hargoneth Executioners, Sisters of Slaughter, or even the Bleak Swords. And that pretty much allowed them to eventually chew through the not so numerous Dwarven infantry and end up winning the fight. Again, what I said in the beginning, I was a little worried that the Dwarves didn't bring enough infantry to fight off the Dark Elves, and in the end that kind of turned out to be true. But Grombrindle still did put up a great fight. Those Flame Cannons, a relatively underrated pick, but they definitely paid big time, going almost 91 kills. Almost all of them are Harganet the Executioners. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this battle. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.